Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D, where we dive deeply and help you wake up to the essence of what it means to live a real, authentic, affluent life. Beyond the balance sheets, the bank accounts, the private jets, the political offices, into the realm of inner wealth and personal power. I'm Sendra D, your companion guide on this trajectory of truthful self-mastery as we celebrate your individuality and your sovereignty. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. And today, you may remember from the last episode, this is part 2 of an interview that I'm doing with Mr. Dhara, and he is based out of Shelburne, Massachusetts. He is a Vipassana meditation teacher, and I'm going to let Barry tell you a little bit about himself. You may remember from last time, but let's begin again.
Well, my name is Barry Lappin. With my wife, we are the teachers at the Vipassana Center in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, as well as the center in Delaware, where we have a relatively new center down there. Both of us, my wife and I, have been practicing for over 50 years now. We both learned in India, and we came back to this country and very much wanted to help other people get the same benefits that we had received while we were living in India. And so the two of us, along with other friends and associates from India, we started this center in 1982 in Shelburne, Massachusetts. And after 42 years, I'm very happy to say the center is at least physically complete. There are courses going on continuously. We have room for about 130 students and about 15 volunteer servers. And very happy to see so many people getting benefit from the practice.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the last episode, we talked about sort of the philosophy, the definition of Vipassana and the benefits. So now I want to lead us into more the technique itself and what one can expect what is Vipassana. You touched a little bit about how the course is structured. So let's begin with the courses themselves. If someone is interested in attending a Vipassana course, why can't they just begin with a 3-day course versus a 10-day course?
Our teacher, S.N. Goenka, used to say that traditionally, generations past, a normal course started out at like 7 weeks. To learn a technique, to be able to observe yourself at a very deep level of mind without the distraction from the outside world is difficult. Sandra, you've done many courses. You know how hard it is. Yes. We are constantly involved in outside activity. So when we do a course, we're becoming completely internal. To learn this technique properly, so you'll be able to practice at home after the course, one needs to sit at least for 10 days to learn an outline. After a 10-day course, one is welcome to come for 3 days or 1-day course in shorter courses like that. But there are also longer courses like 20 days, like 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, and who knows, maybe in the future there'll be even longer courses. But to actually learn the technique, a minimum of 10 days is required. And like Goenka used to say, he said, these old traditional teachers, they said, okay, life is getting a little faster. We'll go from 7 weeks to say 30 days. Do people still get benefit? And the answer was yes, people still got benefit. And so they reduced to 20 days as life got faster. They went to 10 days. And yet, Goenka says, yes, they still get some benefit. They reduced to 7 days and they found, no, they don't get it. So 10 days is a minimum for someone who's never done a course in Vipassana to actually learn an outline of the technique so they're able to practice at home.
Thank you so much for that clarification. And people say, you do courses? You stop talking for how many days? I said, I've done 10, I've done 20. They said, what, 30? Sendra, no, I need evidence. What do you do at these centers? I have a feeling that it's not true. You're just saying that it's true. I have done 30 and even 45. I am never one to sort of stretch the truth, but I will say it's not the easiest path. But for me, it has become a necessary path. Because how I choose to experience life today is more and more improved by me doing courses. And sitting there on a course, I always even pondered while I'm sitting on a course, why am I doing here? Why am I here? And everyone else is probably out in London having a couple drinks, and someone in Miami Beach is enjoying the beach by the seaside. But I do believe, and this practice helped me reconfirm that understanding that this journey for me is about healing. It's about healing the mind. And I actually thought it was about healing the body, but it's always been about healing the mind. So that said, and we won't get into the benefits on that physical level because there are many of them. But this is not the main practice. This is not what the practice focuses on. So you start with a 10-day course and you can evolve eventually to a 30, 45-day course. I am not a teacher, so that's where I stop, 45 days. So someone who has done many other practices, because I've had served many courses and people have come from different backgrounds and even say, oh, I've done meditation before, and they couldn't complete the Vipassana course, the 10-day. Why do you think that is?
I can tell you by my own experience and everybody else that I know, a 10-day Vipassana course is the hardest thing a human being can do. I can also say it's the best thing a human being can do. The reason it is so difficult is for 10 days in a very structured way with very clear instructions. A person is sitting there observing themselves. We're not trying to get away from ourselves. We spend a good portion of our lives running away from ourselves, trying to find something that's going to give us more pleasantness inside so we don't have to face the misery that we do have inside. Somebody who wants to do a Vipassana course also needs to have the volition that I'm ready to observe my own stuff, my own complexes inside. That is extremely difficult. But with the technique that somebody is there to learn, it is very possible. And the results of that are enormous in somebody's life, not only during a 10-day course, but imagine taking a practice home that helps keep your mind a bit cleaner every single day of your life to enable you to function better with your family, with your friends, with your working associates. Even if you're the president of this country, if you're doing that with a mind with a little bit more compassion, a little more love for the people that you're working with, it's going to be better for them. And the first beneficiary of cleaning up our own minds is going to be ourselves.
Indeed.
Now, you talk about going to the beach, doing some sightseeing, all that kind of thing. We can do all that. And it may be extremely pleasant, but it doesn't get us away from ourselves. How many times have you heard people say, I just went on vacation, I'm exhausted? And why are they exhausted? They are exhausted because the mind is still working as it always works, still reacting to what's going on inside, and consequently, that is extremely exhausting. We cannot get away from our stuff. A Vipassana course is difficult because we learn how to observe ourselves. And if we do it properly, we're observing ourselves in a balanced way, which helps us to come out of the reaction, thereby coming out of the exhaustion and misery.
Indeed. You touched the topic of the head of state. I said if I ever became the president of a country, I would make it mandatory that everybody sit on a Vipassana course. I think I would be the second Marie Antoinette. But on more serious note, so I have again served many courses, and Goenkaji, our teacher, he was one who decided he wanted to leave the course. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that story?
Yeah, let's keep in mind, Goenkaji was born and raised in Burma, but he was born and raised in a very strict Hindu community. His family was a very strict conservative Hindu family, though they were living in Burma. His grandfather had emigrated to Burma from India, where he was in business. And so Goenkaji grew up in a very conservative Hindu family in a Buddhist country. But he was very successful in business, even from a young age. He became quite wealthy in his mid-20s, but he also became more and more miserable with tension, with stress, with all of that. And he developed a very severe kind of migraine headache. Nothing helped him. Nothing at all helped him. Because he was a rich man, he traveled all over the world. And he tells his story in the 10-day course. He traveled all over the world, going to the best doctors in England, Switzerland, Germany, US, Japan. And he got back to Burma worse. He was taking morphine for his headaches. It was the only thing that helped him. And then a friend of his, who later became a Supreme Court judge in India, or in Burma, I'm sorry, in Burma, said to him, look, it appears that your disease is psychosomatic in nature. Why don't you try this course with this teacher, Uba Khin, who was an accountant general of Burma, but also a very accomplished Vipassana meditation teacher? Goenkaji did that, but he hesitated a great deal because he did not want to become a Buddhist and leave his conservative Hindu upbringing. Mm-hmm. But when he realized, after Uba Khin said to him, you're coming here to learn how to deal with what's inside. You're coming here to purify your mind. This is not a Buddhist technique. You will become a better Hindu if that's what you want to remain. You eliminate all of this internal misery. The headache will go away as a byproduct. It is not the goal for coming to a course like this. The goal of coming to a course like this is to learn a scientific, non-religious, non-philosophical technique to purify your own mind. It's science. And if you learn this science, you will become a better Hindu. And on day 2 of that course, Goenkaji, first course for Goenkaji, he wanted to run away from this course. That's what he says, which is common for almost everybody. We all want to run away because nobody wants to start to observe what they have inside. It's hard. So just like everybody else, he wanted to run away. He had his bags packed. He was ready to go. And somebody there, another fellow student, said, look, why you want to run away? You're doing really well. The teacher's very happy with what you're doing. And he wanted to run away because he wasn't having what he thought he should have, as opposed to what he did have. And what he did have was a very successful amount of concentration. Goenkaji was a powerful man with strong samadhi, strong concentration. And he decided to stay, and he learned. Even then, he started thinking on day about 5 or 6 of that course. He said, this is just applied Bhagavad Gita, Hinduism. This is applied Upanishad, Hinduism. He said throughout all of these religions, and he was a very learned man, throughout all of these religions, they all say come out of greed, come out of hatred, come out of ignorance, but nobody says how. How do I come out of greed? How do I come out of my anger? He was a very angry man. How do I come out of these things? And then he realized Vipassana is a technique of how to come out of it. So he said, this is just applied Bhagavad Gita. That was a rationalization he made. Applied Upanishad, applied Christianity, applied Judaism, applied anything. But it's the scientific way of how to come out of our misery. And as he was just learning, he wanted to leave a course like anyone else.
And it's inspiring to me because when I sit courses, I feel so flawed and broken because all the, what do you call it, agitation comes on the surface, and it becomes for me a hard to manage. Of course, now I'm more experienced at managing these storms, as we call them. But even in my 20 years, more recently, last 2 months ago, I was sitting a course, and it's as though I never sat a course, but you recall the experiences from the past and you say, this too shall pass. And then you wake up the next day and said, oh my goodness, I can't believe I wanted to, I was so agitated. So it's an experience of going from one landmine to another. But with each storm that I don't react to, I become stronger because it gives me the fortitude to move forward. So that's it. So we have 10-day courses, 20-day courses, 30-day courses, and we will just leave it there. So how does someone evolve through that practice? What are the requirements?
Now, if somebody sits 5 10-day courses, that's one of the requirements. After 5 10-day courses, essentially by that time, they may feel within themselves, I have found my path. I'm not complete. I have not finished. I've not eliminated all of my stuff inside, but I know how to do it. I know what I need to do. I understand the technique. So at that point, there is a commitment to, this is what I'm going to practice for the rest of my life. There is a surrender. This is what I'm going to practice to the rest of my life. But it is a surrender based on wisdom, based on confidence. We can use the word faith if we so choose, but it's a faith that is not blind. It is a faith based in experience and understanding by one's own experience. So with that kind of a mental attitude, And with someone who is doing that and they practice at least 2 hours every day, which is recommended, and they maintain their morality throughout their life, not to kill, lie, steal, rape, and all that sort of thing, and not to take any kind of intoxicants any longer. With that kind of mindset, one is now fit to start going even deeper in the mind. So a 20-day course or a 30-day course goes much, much deeper into the mind where deeper rooted mental conditioning still exists. And because I have such a strong base now of a couple of years of practice, of 5 courses, of good morality, of daily practice, with that base, one is going to be stronger and more able to experience these deeper levels of stuff in our own minds and just get more and more established in the ability to observe it without reacting to it, thereby coming out of even deeper rooted tendencies.
Absolutely.
So, no, so those long courses for someone who in that position are extremely helpful, and you know this by your own experience, is, I've talked to many students coming out of those long courses, myself included, saying, I can't believe how much stuff is really still in there. This agitation you talk about. We are extremely conditioned. Every bit of our minds and bodies are very conditioned. And that condition, whether we believe in past lives or not, doesn't make any difference. We know that from the moment we are born in this life, we are starting to react. Why is a baby crying? We want this, we want that. We are starting to react. We are starting to multiply the conditioning within our own minds. So to change that deep-rooted conditioning of decades of life is a lifetime job. It's really difficult because we go from blindness to brightness, but that brightness is still dealing with all the blindness that we still have.
Absolutely. In this practice, they talk about craving and aversion, which is, we haven't touched enough about that, which is sometimes we want the pleasant sensations, which is going to the beach, which is the pleasant sensation, going to, well, for others, the pub, that's a pleasant sensation. But even there is suffering because sometimes you just want that all the time. You can't tolerate a bit of, how can I say, a withdrawal from that. And that's what it is. It becomes a withdrawal process. So for me, I'm grateful that I have this understanding. So therefore, I don't get too unbalanced when something is taken away from. And someone was sharing with me at a center most recently saying, are you reacting as a toddler today? Or are you reacting as a teenager today? Or are you reacting as an adult today? I said, well, Vipassana has helped me become an adult. It truly is. Wouldn't you say? This is a process of maturity.
It is definitely a process of maturity that can happen at any age, whether we're a child who, say, comes into this life who's a pretty balanced child. They're going to be together even from early on in their lives, or we could go through our life completely ignorant every moment of our life and be an old lady or an old man and be completely miserable because we've done nothing but multiply our own mental conditioning of craving and aversion every moment of our life. Because we don't know what we're doing. We don't understand experientially how we continue to multiply our complexes inside and how that actually makes us miserable. If we knew that that's what we were doing, we would want to make an effort to go in the opposite direction, to come out of that craving and aversion, to come out of the misery. Because when I come out of misery, I'm a happier person. I am the first beneficiary of my own purification, let's say.
There's, yes, deep determination. It's a strong determination, and I'm inspired by those before me. And so when I think of the practice and the evolution of my journey, and I was always a curious child. I wanted to try everything. So Goenkaji talks about, if you come on and just try it and see if it's for you. But for me, I actually would ask, can I just not want this? And I saw the tendency to also develop a craving into doing these courses. So there's a fine line between craving the outside or craving sitting courses. So, and for me, it's constantly having that self-awareness of, should I be in the world or should I be sitting a course? It's a bit of both. I've been able to fine tune it. Again, I'm not perfect at everything, but I want to ask you, as far as, even if for someone who's been on the journey like myself, who has experienced several courses, how do you know to do a short course if you know that you've actually gone too deep into the practice? How do you know to take a break? Because I did take a break. I took a 7-year break actually, because I knew I was doing so from 2011 to 2018. I didn't sit. I was sitting at home because that's when I first came to help my mother, and I realized this is where I was needed. So what do you say to those who have that type of dilemma?
Well, if you're in a situation where you're, say, not able to sit a course because of responsibilities of the life. I remember going to detailing one young mother who had 2 young children, very young children. He said, your first responsibility is to your children. So we can also say similarly, and I remember my own case, I wrote to Goenka to say, I want to come into India. And he said to me, because I was taking care of my paralyzed father at the time, and he said to me, don't worry about it. If you're with your practice, you're with me, you know? And that was really good to hear. And so our lives are going to also determine what we're capable of doing. But if we take a break from the practice itself, whether we go to courses or we don't go to courses, if we're taking a break from the practice, even in our daily lives, what does that mean? Are we taking, because all the practice is to observe ourselves. So if I'm taking a break from observing myself, meaning I'm making myself more ignorant, so I don't know what's going on inside myself, so I can run away or escape from what's going on inside myself, that's a whole different thing. But if somebody can't go to a course, but they're practicing at home and applying this practice in their life, that's another way of looking at it. So all of these things happen, but I would say most important is to keep developing your practice, whether you can do a course or not do a course. If somebody actually understands the technique and they can't get to a course because of whatever the situation is, well, maybe I can sit for a day at home. Maybe I can sit for 3 days at home. Maybe I can even do a 10-day self course at home. So all of these things are possible once you understand the technique. But first you have to learn the technique, and that takes place in a 10-day course, an organized 10-day course.
Indeed. Yes, for me, it was definitely clear that I needed that. I think it was orchestrated by whatever, me or whatever there was that created that situation. So I did need to, but I had that self practice. I had also that determination not to sacrifice the work that I had done previously. I actually build on it. So when I returned to the practice, dedicated practice by 2018, it was 2017 actually, I was ready. I was definitely, I felt again that feeling of I'm home. It was 7 years and then I'm home. It's interesting because I practiced for 7 years, took a 7-year break, and then I think this is my 7th year. But again, I want to talk to more about what does one experience when they come to a center. So eyes wide open. I was in England. I was sightseeing. But what are the 8 teachers expecting a student to do on the course? Because it's silent. Talk a bit about what someone can expect sitting a course.
Well, the courses are in silence for the first 9 days. On the morning of day 10, silence is broken at that time. But it's actually noble silence. It doesn't mean somebody is sitting there completely with their mouth shut. They can't talk to anyone. What it means is I'm not talking to other students. The teachers are there. You can always ask the teachers any question you want. The teachers live there on site with the students for those 10 days, 10 and a half days. If you need something at the material level, I'm cold, I ran out of toothpaste, whatever it may be, you could always ask the student manager, another volunteer on the course. So it's not that we can't speak. We just don't speak to other students. And when we do speak to the teacher, it's usually with the idea of, I want to understand the technique better. I want to understand and make sure that I am practicing properly. So first, let's keep in mind that when someone comes to a 10-day course, they're coming because they want to. Nobody's forcing them. We don't force this on anyone. It's completely voluntary. In fact, the first thing you do when you do a 10-day course is you take certain formalities. One of those formalities is that you have to ask to be taught the technique. You can't just, we're not giving it to you unless you ask for it. And because it's freely given, there are no charges, no financial considerations whatsoever. Nobody pays for anything at a course like this. You understand that everything you receive for 10 days is because of the donations of people who have come before you. And now, because I've been benefited, I want to donate for the benefit of those coming in the future. And I've seen people on welfare give $1. I've seen millionaires give a lot more than that. So and nobody even knows. So it's just all voluntary. So you come to a course and you ask to be taught this practice. You also then take 5 moral precepts. That means not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, not to have any kind of sexual activity at all on a course. That means celibacy for 10 days, not for the whole life, and not to take any kind of intoxicants, no drugs, no alcohol, badly about anybody else. If our mouths are closed, our speech is correct. And when we talk to the teacher, it's going to be about the technique, and that is considered right speech. So in that regard, we keep silence. It's helpful to the technique. And then the first 3 days of the practice is to develop enough concentration of mind using a technique called Anapada meditation, which is just focused on the incoming breath and the outgoing breath, which is universal. It's not a Buddhist object or a Hindu object or Christian or Jewish or black or white or Asian. It doesn't matter. Everybody's breathing in, everybody's breathing out. So we use that object, which is universal, to develop sensitivity, to develop concentration, to be able to start feeling something in this area of the mind and body. With that concentrated mind on the afternoon of day 4, we start practicing Vipassana, which means we take that concentrated mind where we're starting to feel something in a small area, and we start spreading that attention and focusing on everything that we feel within the framework of our mind and body. Everything, every physical sensation, understanding that whatever we feel physically is a manifestation of what's going on in our minds. It may also be a manifestation of what's going on in the environment or the food that we've eaten or our past mental conditioning. But whatever arises on the body, for whatever reason, the mind is always feeling whatever is happening. I say, I feel cold. I feel hot. I feel agitated. I feel peaceful. It's because these are all sensations on the body. And what we learn is that every sensation that we feel is in a constant state of change. It's impermanent. And when we understand that, we start to come out of our reaction to what we feel. In other words, I don't try to cling only to the pleasant sensations that I get when I go to that beach or I go sightseeing in London, because they're all going to change. What happens if it's raining that day and I can't go sightseeing? Or let's say I go to the beach and I get sunburned. It's not so pleasant anymore. So we learn to understand every sensation is impermanent, and we understand how we continue to react to everything we feel. Mind reacts to the body, wherever that sensation happens to come from. In a course of 10 days, most of the sensations we feel are because of our own mental conditioning. When we blindly continue to react to these physical sensations, with clinging, with craving, with hatred, with aversion, all we're doing then is multiplying our agitation, multiplying our anger, multiplying our fear, multiplying our depression. If we learn to observe it and not react to it, we're actually starting to come out of it. And I'll give you an example. If you have a big fire, a bonfire, and you keep throwing fuel on that fire, what's going to happen to that fire? It will only get bigger. It will continue to burn forever. But what happens if you stop throwing fuel on the fire? It will die down, eventually go out. It's the same thing with our mental conditioning. If I keep reacting to the physical sensations on the body, which are related to what's happening in the mind, throwing fuel on my fire of any particular complex. If I stop throwing fuel on the fire, it means I don't react to the physical sensations. I am starting to come out of that particular complex. And if you follow that through, that complex, that fire, that bonfire within our minds is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. My reactions become less. I become more and more peaceful, even with that stuff still there.
Indeed. I had the smile on my face because when you start talking about the first course, my first course, I spoke to the teacher every day. And my question was, what's next? What's next? Typical investment banker wanting to be in control. What's next? Every day it's just observe, just observe. And really that's the summary of the practice, to observe what you're experiencing. And so I want to take you in a, still talking about the first course now, to talk about how one applies. It's not for everyone. And we definitely have a process of review. How do you screen applicants? That's the question. How do
Okay.
you screen applicants?
Well, there is an application process. And don't forget, I said people have to ask to come here. It's not like you apply and you just get in. You have to apply through the application process. Generally, that's online. And let's say somebody indicates in their application problems that I have depression, I have anxiety, I'm schizophrenic, I just got out of a psychiatric ward. When you consider what you're doing when you do this practice, it means you're learning to observe everything about yourself. So if I have severe complexes that have been really difficult for me in my life, it may not be that this is a suitable time to do a practice like this, because, like we said, it's intense, it is hard, and you're learning to observe everything that's going on within yourself. So in this review process, let's just take an example. Someone says, I have depression. I'm taking medication for it. And as people have said to me in this country, they're giving out medicines like candy, anybody. It doesn't mean you're not going to get into a course. Most likely you will get into that course. But there will be a process where we want to speak with you. We may have another questionnaire for you to fill out. We may even ask you to have your doctor or therapist sign off that, yes, I feel my patient is stable and this will benefit them. It means they have to do some research themselves to understand what their patient will be getting themselves into. I have even had situations where I have requested the patient would you allow me to speak to your doctor or therapist? And everybody has always said yes. And I said, you can be there, you don't have to be there, it doesn't matter, it's up to you. But with their permission, I would explain to the doctor what this patient is going to be doing when they sit a course like this. And the doctor then can actually make a better assessment whether I feel this is good for my patient or not. If somebody has some very severe psychiatric illness, it's probably better for them not to do a course. Why drag up and go deeper into your own mind to stimulate this kind of thing that's been so difficult for you in your life? We don't want to do that to people. Everything we do is for the safety of the student. And we know someone, even in your profession, Sendra, you're an investment banker. And I am sure that comes with a great deal of stress and tension and all that sort of thing. And there may be people who it's better for them not to be an investment banker.
Right.
Right. So we're not trying to exclude people through an application process. We're trying to ensure that everybody who comes will be able to practice this technique, who will be able to get benefit from this technique, and that this course will be beneficial for them and not just harm them in any way, shape, or form. So we want to be assured, let's say someone says depression on their form, I would call that person. I would talk to that person. We have a lot of personal contact. And I would say, when you do a course like this, it's very possible that your own mental conditioning of depression, even though you say you feel good now, you're on meds, your life is great, the situation is perfect, everything is wonderful. I say, but you still may feel the seeds of that depression within yourself because you're going to go deep in your own mind.
Correct.
Are you willing to do that? And I can tell you that almost every human being I have talked to and asked that question, they all say, that is why I want to come, because I know it's still there. Even though it's not situational right now, even though everything in my life is great, if they know that that's why they are coming and they're willing to face whatever is going on within them, and you feel they're really stable, like an investment banker who has to deal with situations every day, well, then probably they're going to be allowed to come. It's rare that we refuse somebody, but if and when we do, is because of instability in their lives, and we want to make sure they're safe and keep working with their doctor.
Absolutely. This was an important point that I wanted to stress, because a lot of people believe that, first of all, this is not a cure-all, and you may want to resolve something, but also the transparency is necessary for the people at the center to support you, because we can't help what we don't know about. Go ahead.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind what the purpose of Vipassana is. It's not to cure illness, although we understand so much of our psychiatric illness will be cured if we purify the mind as a byproduct. But the whole purpose of this technique is to develop wisdom, to develop understanding, which is absolutely essential to purify the mind of all these, we call them psychiatric conditions. We put labels on things, but really it is mental conditioning. These are complexes in the mind.
Yes.
And if I can develop the ability to learn to observe those things within myself, meaning when anxiety arises in the mind and I'm having a panic attack, I say I feel panic because you feel it within your physical body related to what's happening mentally. So if I can feel those sensations and maintain my balance of mind or equanimity, well, look at the results of that in our life. It means I don't have to be a slave to my panic. I can actually sit there in my banking executive meeting and having a panic attack, yet keep my head together. But that's not easy. And we want to make sure somebody is going to be in a position to be able to understand the practice so they can use this in their daily life, never to hurt or harm anyone. We do not refuse somebody easily, and we don't do it to differentiate. We do it for the safety of the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've served dozens of courses, and I have seen, even if, when I'm sitting courses, I pay attention to no one. But when I'm serving a course, I have seen some of the consequences of people not being transparent about certain conditions that they have. And
Yes.
some of them go away, but they return. Some people say, I tried a course for, 2 days and it wasn't a proper time. And this is my second time, and they completed it after the second time. So I say to the audience out there, if you've been to a Vipassana course and weren't able to complete it the first time, that doesn't say that you're not going to be prepared to do it the second time. So I encourage everyone. So yeah, this has been very helpful. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but what we would do in a situation like that, somebody has left the course, they want to come back.
Yes.
Generally, yes, they can come back and do another course, but it will be with the understanding I'm making a much stronger determination to stay and face that which drove me away in the first place. Because if somebody leaves a course, there's a good chance they're going to want to leave again if they come for another course, even if the external situations have changed for them. But if they come with that strong determination, understanding why I left in the first place, they're it's much more probable that they will have a very successful course. And that's what we want. And we also encourage people, please do not lie on an application form just to get into a course. It's not for your benefit. Be perfectly truthful and transparent, and we will call you if we have any concerns.
And the concern is for your welfare, for the student, because like I said, I've been a center manager and I've served several courses.
Mhm.
And it's to assist you and making sure that it's the right time for you. Again, Vipassana is a very intense, I call it boot camp for living. And so I refer to boot camp because my father threatened to send me to boot camp at one time when in my young adult life. He says, we should send her to military boot camp. And my mother's like, what? She's the baby. My father says, no, she's an adult now. He couldn't manage that, but found me. There was a way out of it, not military boot camp, but Vipassana. I highly encourage everyone to consider this path, as it's been transformative for me. I have had many passings in my life, and I don't think I would have been as balanced person today as a result of this practice. This is a priority for me. It's like for me brushing my teeth. So I'm grateful to teachers like Barry, who have continued to serve students selflessly, giving up everything and just dedicating their lives to this practice. And me, I'm called to serve in different ways, like, for instance, to bring you this information. So Barry, to wrap up the segment in this second conversation, you would like to share anything else?
I would. I would like to emphasize that this is a voluntary organization. There are no commercial motives at all. The people who will be cooking and cleaning and managing and doing everything on a course that some of you may be sitting are all volunteers. These are all people who have passed through the exact same process, maybe more than once. And because they've received so much benefit in their own lives, they want to be able to help others get the same benefit. Volunteers do not get paid. Teachers do not get paid. There are no charges to come to a course. As said before, it's all donation based. So the only motivation for having these courses is for the benefit of society. There is no other reason. And we also know that if we really want peace and harmony in our society, which is so disharmonious now, if we really want peace and harmony in our society, it's only going to come when the individuals in the society start to become more peaceful, start to become more harmonious, and start to come out of their own misery inside. We can't legislate peace and harmony for human beings. Consequently, we have lawyers and politicians all over the world trying to beat whatever the laws are so we don't have to abide by them, because we can't abide by them. So if we can come out of our own misery even a little bit internally, we are going to be more productive members of society and help add to the peace and harmony of society. That's
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I have to say that having served many courses with different types of Vipassana teachers who serve, so no one is here on this path to increase their ego. No, and though when you go to a center, everyone is the same. We're all learning on the path. You may see that the only difference between those who are sitting and those who are serving get to talk, and those who are sitting remain silent, except if they're communicating with those serving or with the teachers. But otherwise, it's a selfless process, and it benefits. And what I've been told and what I've experienced is serving a course is to help me on my path. The business of service is priceless, and there are the opportunities for service everywhere. And Barry has chosen this path of service. I want to say thank you, and I wanted to add a sort of small story. The Shelburne Falls Center almost didn't happen because of a payment, because there was a payment that was taken when it shouldn't have had. But it's the story where Goenkaji was supposed to set up a course or conduct a course, and a payment had been taken. And Goenkaji says we can't take a payment.
Well, I don't know that exact story.
You don't?
But I know that has happened in various places.
Okay, so talk about what happens when somebody takes a payment.
The only people that are allowed to donate money to a course or to a center are people who have already passed through a 10-day course, received the benefit from that 10-day course, and then with the motivation that I have received so much benefit, I want to also donate for the benefit of others. So if somebody just says, oh, I want to give $1 million to the center and I'll take a tax write-off for that, that would not be allowed. But if let's say it was a family member who saw that you, as a person who meditates, has received a lot of benefit, and my son or my daughter is much better than they used to be, no longer getting drunk, no longer getting stoned, leading a productive life, a relative like that could give a donation because it sees benefit in their own family. A corporation could give a donation if one of their members donates to a center, and they have a matching donation program because it's because of the volition of that person who works for that corporation. But in general, we do not take donations from people who have not passed through a 10-day course. And so I can't think of how that happened or if that ever happened in Shelburne, but I can tell you a quick story that the day Goenkaji did the first course at the Shelburne Center in '83, the first big course, where we had 250 people on site. That day it was starting in a few hours. We did not have a license to operate because we kept failing a water test because of construction dirt and things of that like that. And a very sweet old volunteer lady showed up at the center. She was a member of the Shelburne Falls Health Department. And she came, we were all standing around outside wondering what we're going to do. And she came up and said, do you have $10 for your license? And we all laughed and certainly gave her the $10, took our license, and of course started that night. So that was a financial story, but it wasn't the one that I think you were referring to.
Oh, my apologies. I'll have to look it up. It's been a while since I read that somewhere on social media. And I have to say, social media has to always be double checked, but I'll send it to you. Again, I want to say thank you for joining me today on Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. It's been a pleasure and a delight. And I'm trusting the audience can benefit from it. Of course, the links to the center and how you can reach a center email and website will be posted underneath the video and the podcast. If you have any questions for Barry, please let me know and I'll make sure I ensure that he'll get those questions. But most importantly, go to the Vipassana website, which is Dhamma, DHAMMA.org, which is the global site, which provides you with the links to various centers around the world. Like I said, my life would not be the same without it, and I'm forever blessed for all those who came before me to bring me this gift. Thank you so much. And until the next one, I think that's it.
Thank you, Sandra.
Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D's podcast and join us every week as we uncover the stories of those who triumphed over life-altering challenges to achieve not just financial success, but a richer, a deeper, a more altruistic life. It's about time we redefine what it means to be a truly affluent individual. Don't you agree? So come and join me. And let's be unstoppable on this journey called life. Because here, affluence isn't just a buzzword. It's a path to waking up to your authentic being.